Welcome back, everybody, to another episode with wow, I totally messed that up. I haven't done an intro in about 2 weeks. We're gonna rewind, do that again. Welcome back, everybody, for another episode with the Fulfilling Destiny podcast. I'm your host, Jan-Marini Pacleb, and we're back after a yikes 3 week hiatus. And with me today is someone really, really, really special and actually out of state. So please introduce yourself.
My name is Lucky Sparkman. I'm the executive director of Bleed Free, which is a Detroit-based nonprofit that's providing free reusable period products to those that need them.
Ooh, I executive director. I was gonna say
Yes.
producer, and I'm thinking like social media and all that stuff. Oh, fancy titles. Honestly, whenever I keep forgetting to actually look up people's titles, whenever I email them to come on the podcast, it's like, yeah, I'm just gonna invite them in. Next thing you know, it's like, yeah, introduce yourself. Full titles here, and I'm like, oh. Well, with like I was like, I'm really with somebody who's top dog right now. So it's a little intimidating sometimes. Cause last week I was talking with somebody who's been in the incarceration system.
Okay.
And they are now we like to call them now that they are formerly incarcerated or they are a returning citizen. And this person is now pursuing a PhD in UNC, I think University of Northern Carolina, uh, to for I believe it's criminal justice, and to write a paper on reform and what we could do to help people who are returning back to society in that way.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, but when she was introducing herself, she had like all these stuff like, I'm a grad student, I'm an assistant professor, blah 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 blah. I was just like, oh my goodness. I was like starstruck. So every time I have someone else new and they are the head of something special, I think that's really cool to have them come on. And then of course, like the awe in my face is probably pretty obvious, like right now. So Lucky, glad to
Yes.
have you here. I like to jeez, my introductions suck, but I can share a funny story with our audience right now. Is that when I reached out to you, I thought you were here in California until I asked somebody in the staff and intergroup chat. It's like, has anyone heard of this before? It's like, yo, girl, that's in Detroit. I was like, oh, so in my shame, it's like, you know what? It couldn't hurt to ask to talk to you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's why we started talking. And when we met, it's like, well, let's have you on here and then let's see what are some similarities and differences on how things are handled in between across state lines. I mean,
Yeah.
so there's that. So let's go start from the very beginning.
Okay.
If you feel comfortable sharing, what is your period story? Because that's something that we do here in Fulfilling Destinies, that we have our Instagram account,
Mm-hmm.
and this was posted anonymously or not, of where our menstruators began. Like, what was their first experience dealing with their menstrual cycle? So,
Mm-hmm.
by all means.
So, I kind of grew up in a weird house. We were
Okay.
we were just like very conservative,
Oh, okay.
and just like I had my parents and then two brothers, but like my dad and my brothers didn't talk about periods,
Got
didn't
it.
want to hear about
Got it.
periods. My mom talked about, like, she explained everything to me that was like going to happen before it happened, but not super extensively.
Oh, yeah.
And I just kind of had like the basics, and then she like handed me that like classic The Care and Keeping of You American Girl book that I feel like every 12-year-old born in the late 80s, early 90s received as a prepubescent individual.
Yeah.
Um, so that was like my guideline, because that was where my information came from. So I know that I was home. I was already sick with something, and I was like home, and went to the bathroom, was like, oh, well, there it is. Cool. And I just felt like really gross and like kind of ashamed and kind of like grossed out by myself. And then of course, like, my mom didn't really prepare in a way that like, so basically all she had was like the giant overnight pads, which like I was like a tiny petite little child. I probably weighed less than 60 pounds
Oh my god.
at the time I started my
Oh
period.
my god.
So literally
Tiny.
this thing went like from my belly button to like my tailbone. And it was just so awkward. I felt like I was wearing a diaper. I was like, sure my brothers knew. I was positive that somehow telepathically my brothers knew that I started my period. And I was so embarrassed. I was so mortified. I didn't want my dad to know all this stuff. I didn't know people even talked about it. So I was homeschooled, weird house, like I said. I was homeschooled.
It's not weird. Homeschool is not weird.
So the way I was homeschooled was weird. So
okay.
not
Fair
all
enough.
homeschooled, but me.
Yeah. Okay.
My family was weird. So I was homeschooled. So I basically had like my brothers and the kids in the neighborhood as far as like my social group, right? And there was only boys in the neighborhood. I was the only girl in the neighborhood.
Oh no.
So I didn't have anybody to talk to about it besides my mom, which was embarrassing for me because I don't know, she made it feel like it was something embarrassing to talk about. And I genuinely, like, I didn't realize that people would speak candidly about their periods. And I really think that I remember people, I ended up going to high school and people in my class thought I hadn't started my period because I literally never talked about it. Never spoke about it like the whole ninth grade year. And like I was mortified at the fact that girls would just be like openly discussing their periods in the bathroom. It was just weird to me because I didn't get raised around that stuff. And I feel like as I got older, I started to realize there's like very different ways of handling it. And there's some people that feel really comfortable going into it and talking about it. And there's some people that like really prefer to keep it private. And I respect either decision, but I do feel like the private aspect of it and the way people kind of keep it hush hush and everything does kind of add stigma to it.
It does.
And I feel like it can contribute to just the problem of period poverty because obviously nobody wants to talk about being poor. And if you also don't want to talk about your periods, the chances of you bringing up like, hey, I can't afford products for my period, that's why I'm missing work, school, whatever, is probably not going to be something you're going to admit to. So I just kind of over time started to realize it wasn't that big of a deal and it's just something some people's bodies do and I didn't need to be freaked out or embarrassed by it. I like to think, so I have two kids. I have an 11-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter. And I like to think they're pretty cool about periods in general. We talk about periods a lot in my house, being with what I do. And like, I have never seen my son act remotely grossed out or flinch or whatever at like bringing up the topic of periods. And that was not my experience growing up with brothers. So I like to think we're doing okay or like better than how I was raised, but I'm sure they'll grow up and think of better ways to handle it too. And hopefully we'll just kind of keep getting better. I don't know.
Yeah, no, like exactly. You're right. Nobody wants to talk about if I couldn't afford lunch that day or something like that. And then, you know, of course, by extension, I don't want to talk about things I cannot afford. Like I said, like growing up with essentially, I have two twin cousins who end up living in my household at separate times who ended up like kind of raising me in a way. They never talked about periods with me, even though they are probably full aware that sometimes I'm on my period or not. But it's not like they never shamed me about it. It's just they don't talk about it, which is one half of the conversation. It takes two people to talk. But I did appreciate that when they had to, whenever my parents were always had, they would buy things for me and my sister while they were gone, just in case. But then now it's like, well, we could talk about it now that we're like, I'm like way grown and he has kids now. One of them has kids. The other one, both of them have kids now that I remember. But now, and both of them have at least one girl. So it's just like, well, that's going to be a conversation for them to have in the future.
Yep.
At some point, they'll start menstruating.
Yep.
So then that would be amazing and that would be really sweet. But at the same time, even with my closest guy friends, it's like, oh, before I used to like keep myself pretty censored when it comes to talking about my period, and then I would only talk to some of my girlfriends, be like, hey, it's like, hey, do you have a pad? Like, I totally forgot, blah blah blah. And sometimes even between my girlfriends, I don't want to talk about it because it's just like, well, it's not like they need to know. And it's kind of like, well, I will only ask them and talk about it if I need something from them, in case something went amiss.
Right.
So it's just like, oh great. I don't want to. It's like I don't want to talk about the pain that I have too. The cramps. Like, well, it's just on like preaching to the choir. They already know that this stuff happens. So it's like, but I need to tell you because it sucks and I'm gross. I feel like everybody knows, and I get paranoid. So it's like I just really need to chill out. Now that we're older, and especially in quarantine too, when I do occasionally see them, sometimes we're just like, oh my god, I'm just hating my periods. It's like, yeah, preach it, girl. Like, you want something to go with that? It's like, you know what? That makes me feel better about it, honestly. But before, like in high school, middle school, when I started mine in middle school, it's just like nobody wanted to talk about it. And then every like person was like hounding on, like, all right, who's on their period? Did they leak yet? Like, let's go steal their pads and tampons at the time as a prank. It's like, oh, don't do that anymore. Yep, I mentioned the story before in the earlier episodes of the podcast that was a cruel prank that people did before. Is that if you were someone who started menstruating, you are the next best victim, other than like, other than other cliche types, nerds and all that.
Right.
Right. Because you were a woman and then you start developing and everybody's eyes are locked on you for XYZ reason. And it's just like, it's so cruel because it just messes up your psyche a lot. And I feel bad for some of my friends who developed early and who had rapid changes with their bodies, and then it's a whole different type of experience, especially if you're in middle school and then in high school, where obviously your brain is more developed, but then even then it's sad. It's really sad. And to that person who had been bullied, that I know who she is like, I'm so sorry that happened. If we were smarter, better, and less like jerks, then the conversation might be completely different, but it's not. But that's I'm glad that your son is going to be more open and more comfortable in talking about it. It's going to be a natural conversation for him in the future. So that's something that I really love to see, because we don't talk about it enough, even though like for me, I feel like I'm doing it pretty late. Better earlier than later, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree.
So when you created Bleed Free, when did you create Bleed Free?
So last year when we first got our first stimulus, I don't really remember exactly when that was. I was kind of like looking for ideas of something more meaningful that I could do with it. And just try and help people, because so many people were having such a hard time last year. It was a crazy year, and I just wanted to do something more. So I've known about period poverty for quite a while, but I started digging into the research a bit more, and also just like kind of looking at the waste that period products create. And I've been a cup user for 6 or 7 years now at this point, and it's really so much better than any other products I've tried. And I felt a lot of benefit came from like the education I received from where I first heard about cups, and just the benefits of using a cup instead of pads and tampons, the cost benefits and just the health benefits and the environmental benefits. So I started kind of reaching out to different companies that make period cups and period underwear and things like that, and presenting them with this idea of like, hey, I want to give out period cups and underwear to people who are having trouble affording pads and tampons. And I didn't get a lot of very positive responses. if we're being honest. Because I'm just a person.
Right.
And, you know, I guess people maybe didn't trust me or didn't want to, you know, give me any deals, or they didn't think that I genuinely wanted to do this. I'm like, I don't know why you think I want 500 period cups for myself, but okay.
Like, ew. You
It's
only
a
need like
little
2 or 3.
excessive.
Yeah.
But so I just started like just kind of buying like 2 or 3, and then if I saw somebody just like on Facebook that like they kind of seemed like they were maybe struggling, I just kind of like reach out to them like, hey, I know you're dealing with this right now, but like, how are you on pads and tampons? Have you ever considered trying a cup? Would you want to if I gave you a brand new one? And just kind of like sneakily giving these
Yeah,
out and distributing. Yeah.
sneakily advertising yourself. At least just try this, try this. No,
Yes.
that's fine. That's fine.
And then over time I started like researching more heavily into like how to actually start a nonprofit and what steps needed to be taken and just kind of what it entails, which is a lot. And earlier this year, I actually incorporated and asked a couple close friends if they wanted to be on the board, and we filed our 501c3. And
Nice.
we're like not even 2 whole months old, actually.
What?
We're like, yeah. So we're like a little baby organization, but
Oh,
we've
cool. We're
already given
baby.
out, yeah, we've already given out over 300 different people products in just a short time. So it's really exciting to see just how it's grown in such a short time, and
Oh
kind of
yeah, absolutely.
both exciting and terrifying to imagine what it's going to turn into over time.
No, that's a great thing though. Although my next question, for your, where are you in Detroit City?
So I am, we're not in the city of Detroit, actually. I live in Livonia, which is like 20 minutes or so outside of Detroit.
Okay.
I grew up in a town called Taylor, which is about 10 minutes south of Detroit. And I worked in Detroit for years, and the ladies who are on the board with me have all worked in Detroit or lived in Detroit or both at some point. But Detroit is kind of like our big city,
It's your base city.
you know, hub. And
I was
there's
just
like, sorry, go ahead.
sorry. This is why I love Zoom calls. Love interrupting people. Sorry, I really don't. No. I just want to ask, like, to your knowledge, are you the only distributor in that current like radius?
Yeah, as far as I know, because I did search first because I don't want to like start a nonprofit when there's a bunch of other nonprofits doing the same thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's much better to just volunteer or donate if there's a nonprofit in your area doing something you're passionate about, because
Right.
that's just what I always recommend for people. But I couldn't find anyone who both used inclusive language and did reusable products. I found a couple just in the country in general who did reusable products, but they were really tiny and they did it on a very small scale, and it was all about women and girls and completely left out trans men and non-binary people, intersex people, anyone else who might menstruate.
Menstruators as a whole. Yes.
Menstruators as a whole. So those were things that were important to me.
Of course.
There's no nonprofits or organizations, to my knowledge, that I could find that deal specifically with menstruators or menstrual hygiene products at all in my area. There's like charities and organizations that give out like food and may also give out hygiene products, but it's just kind of a general umbrella type organization. It doesn't focus specifically on menstrual hygiene like we do.
See, okay, so those are like your 2 conditions. Because when I first hopped in, it was by then the language had already started to change, right? So before, my trade was like feminine hygiene products, but then in a way it's already exclusive. And you know, if you're like non-binary or you're trans, you might not identify with that type of adjective. And that could be very it could clash with their identity. So having that already was already an issue. Then obviously I thought at the time, just like, that it's kind of weird, because it's just like, well, I'm not necessarily feminine, but I do need to use them. But it's kind of like an afterthought for me. But for someone who has an attachment to identity of certain adjectives, that might just be soul crushing. So then by the, like, within the year that I've joined as an intern, it already started to change to just menstrual hygiene products only. That meant when I did talks or meetings with other people, I had to be that person now to say, like, no, we don't call it that anymore. It's just hygiene products. Or when they talk about people who are homeless, that's not a homeless person. Like, no, this is someone who's dealing with a housing insecurity or experiencing homelessness, because it's a transitory state. It's not intended to be forever. It's this person just needs a little bit more help getting to a more secure household to any degree. So that I had to be that person. It was very strange being that person. Normally I was like, you know what, just let it slide. Don't talk about it. It's like, it's not the time and place to do it, because I'm just one person in this giant company of other people who are willing to collaborate with me or collaborate with Fulfilling Destiny. And it's just like, no, I need to correct him on this, because if I don't correct him now, this is going to be the start of our conversation. Well, you didn't say it before. Why did you do it then? It's like, oh, yeah. So now there's the language change. And I think that is actually very important, that it's mentors as a whole, the whole umbrella term. Women, cis and trans, or to anybody who has a uterus and is going to experience that up until menopause or a hysterectomy by choice. So stuff like that. So I really do applaud you for that, of making an organization that includes both reusable products and stuff. For us here in Fulfilling Destiny, because of to those who we mostly serve, the access to water is very difficult. So while we don't offer cups for them to use or reusable, unreused, we do offer it. I believe we do offer it to people who are in low income. So the school children, or people who are like in college, high school, and all that stuff, if they have to be home away from schools, I think that would be like our next group to offer those products with. I know a lot of people in our staff and intern that does use cups. We had an episode where we showed like how you were supposed to put on. Like, obviously don't put it on in person, but how to do it is just like, oh, that's such a foreign thought to me. Cups for 7 years? Most of them only did like 2 or 3. So like that's really interesting, because I've never done it. I don't like, conservative household, having something inserted inside of me was definitely a big no-no.
That was the same for my experience too.
It's just a big no-no, or like the ideas of what it meant if you had something inside you that was a foreign object. It's just like, it's different. But so when as a small company and slowly extending your reach a little by little, what's your end goal for you, if there is an end goal for your little company?
So honestly, like, I just kind of want to shoot for it and end period poverty. That's always going to be the goal.
That's always the goal.
So you know what I mean? If we can cut down on it. So originally, my like 1 year goal, I was like, it would be really cool if we could provide 100 different people with reusable period products. That would be awesome. And in February, our first like full month of operating, we gave out 42 different people products. And I was like, wow, this is great. This is awesome. 42, that's a lot of people. And then on March 2nd or 3rd, we got like 40 requests all in one day.
Nice.
And I was just like, oh my, like that's a lot of people. And then they just kind of kept coming, and we're just like, this is a lot of people. And then like a week ago, something like that, we ended up having like 150 overnight or something requests. And so we're still kind of like trying to figure it out, because originally we were planning on mostly doing community events where we like handed it out
Mhm.
and then doing a small amount of like shipments. But like it was kind of, it started out as like pretty much all shipments.
Yeah, I saw on
So
Twitter.
yeah, we had to start a waiting list now,
Mhm.
which is both cool and sucks because
You
obviously
don't
I don't want to make
yeah.
anybody wait because their period is going to keep coming whether or not I send them something.
Mhm.
Um, but just with where we're at with funding and everything like that, like people are still finding out about us. We're still building trust in the community, honestly, and things like that. And I understand why people are hesitant to donate. We've had donations and stuff like that, but for the most part, everything's kind of just come out of my family's pocket,
No,
which
but
is fine.
singular, yeah. So
Yeah,
singular contributions at least, but nothing where it's like a stipend where it's be constant, 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 constant.
exactly. Yeah.
Uh,
So, obviously, like I'm not wealthy. We have a budget. So we did have to do a waiting list and everything, but we're doing
okay.
the best we can. And in Michigan now, it's just now starting to get a little bit warm out, instead of bitterly cold. And so we're
Yeah.
gonna start scheduling community events around like southern Michigan, northern Ohio, hopefully, and kind of focus on community events throughout the summer and hope that by the time we hit fall, we'll kind of reach a stride where we've built, trust with the community and
Mhm.
people are, giving more
Mhm.
generously and we have more consistent income besides just my family's income that we can
Yeah.
manage sending out, you know what I mean? Sending
Yeah.
out hundreds a month and doing community events,
Mhm.
hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a great way to start, honestly. It's like you said, build community trust so they know that you're
Mhm.
there for the long run and not just not that you will, but
Right.
there are people who have done who made organizations who used it for the wrong reason. Like, let's be fair,
Right.
that
Of
did happen.
course.
That does
Absolutely.
happen.
It happens.
But yeah, building trust, that's actually I like to think that's a pretty good timeline. Slowly building trust, make it sure that you're like a consistent phase for community events. How
Mhm.
often you do it a month until that fall time hits. But it's great that your family is super, super supportive. And when it comes to funding it out of your pocket as a means for now,
Mhm.
but even if it's your own personal pocket, the people who do use in the 42 or to that 100 that reached out to you are gonna be super, super grateful that you're doing so. And you're saving the environment because it's it wastes a lot. Wastes a
Yes.
lot. But until at least in California, until we could do something about it, it's like it means to an end for
Exactly.
now.
Right.
Um and then to everyone, to those who are like at least in the streets, it's like until we have a way to find meaningful access to water aside from public spaces to
Right.
clean your underwear or anything like that, uh unfortunately that you just have to wait, which
Yeah.
really blows my mind because it's like the idea of reusable products is amazing, it really is, or products that break down organically, that would be amazing
Mhm.
too, but that's also very hard and very expensive to do at the same time. So it's just
Yes.
like, but have you actually been reached by others abroad outside of the
Yeah.
United States?
We have actually. So we made a connection with an organization in India, but we keep kind of missing each other. But they're doing kind
Oh,
of
like
similar
times.
work to what we're doing. There's quite a time difference, apparently. But we're trying to connect with them, and then we were able to connect with a community organization called Sena Yetu organization, and I'm probably saying it right, but I've only ever read it. Um, so I don't know, I could be saying it wrong. But anyways, they're in Nairobi, Kenya, and it's a husband and wife who are kind of just trying to make their community a little better, and they do like period dignity packages
Mm-hmm.
that they'll hand out, and they don't just do menstrual products specifically. They'll also have like community events where they'll do school supplies.
Uh-huh. That's
They'll
good.
do, different things like that, food and everything like that. It's a really, really cool organization. And we've been able to like send a little aid over there, and we're hoping as we kind of build up, we can send more, because that would be really exciting.
That'd be really exciting, especially helping out
Yeah.
other countries that might need it just a
Yeah.
little bit more. So that's cool, because I saw that when I was like scrolling through social media when I heard about you. I don't know actually how I found you. It's just next thing you know, I see Bleed Free, and I'm like, what's this? Oh, they have a logo. I'm gonna go take a look at them more. And it's like, oh, I found out that you are a. I'm so sorry by the way for my social media account. If I didn't like your timeline, I'm super sorry. Just
That's okay.
big nerd. But aside from like my whatever I've been flooding your timeline with, when I go through mine, it's just like it's obviously all like the stuff that I like, and then or when I occasionally talk about pure poverty, next thing you know, bleed free, retweeted or liked, and I was just like, oh, that's cool. So let's go click on their name and find out. It's like, oh, they're another organization. I actually thought you were a lot bigger. I didn't know that you literally just got your foot in the door.
Yeah, we're just a baby organization.
No, it's fine. Fulfilling Destiny is on their 2017. We'll be on our 4th.
That's
And
awesome.
like I said, I didn't know about it until my sister literally told me about it, gave me her card, like, check this out. I was like, oh, that's cool. Put it away, don't think about it again until the pandemic hit. It's like, okay, I kind of need volunteer hours, so all right, let's try this.
Nice.
You know, but for it's not a flex, because how our companies work are completely two different things. That we are San Diego based. We have just started. One of our staff members who lives in San Jose is trying to make roots in San Jose now.
Okay.
So it's just like you said, building community trust, working with the schools nearby to help make sure it's getting settled. Because since we do have to do this partly remotely, especially to her who lives all the way in San Jose, it's pretty amazing. So I don't know if we had plans, or maybe this is just me just talking on my ass. I'll bleep that out later. But I would like to think that at some point we will be expanding to end period poverty, because it's not just here. Even though we do have the 4th biggest populace of those experiencing homelessness, we're the 4th. So there is towards the 1st and towards the 10th to 50th. So there at some point there is types of poverty that we think we could help, like cope with, because poverty as a whole is an extension to everything that we see now, like crime or just people like fighting on the streets. Like I'm sure you saw in the news, like Texas, when they had the big snowstorm, you have vulnerable people out in the streets and they had to be housed quickly so we don't have people dying on the streets, quite literally.
Exactly.
But if GoFundMe's or people using their own pockets to house individuals who are exposed just for that one crisis, like what happens to the day-to-day where there's people trying to sleep in parks or on a bench that is like straight and flat and not covered with spikes or all those things. So it's just like
so much. Once you learn about anti-homeless architecture, I feel like you can't unsee it.
I can't unsee it. I don't see it here. Which is good. What I like about, at least where I live in San Diego. I don't see it, maybe like covert, but at least for like the obvious, like it's not spike. Like, oh my god, when I saw that, I don't know where I saw it. Tumblr maybe when I was younger at the time, and I saw that in other places. It might be US based or in abroad, but I was just like, what?
Yeah.
Like hiding underneath an awning when it's raining, but you can't because there's something there. It's just like, really? Come on. I don't know how recently I saw this. I did see this in my social media accounts. One city, I think it is one city took out the use of benches. I don't know if it's for a rail system or a bus system, but they took it out because they didn't want to encourage those experiencing homelessness using it. Like, all right, but you took out the benches like pregnant individuals who need it, the people who are, who are disabled, right? They have no
Right.
mobility, wheelchairs and all that stuff, or they have walkers, or the elderly, or even
Right.
children, because children get really tired, so they need to
Yeah.
sit. It's like, why would you get rid of something that other people really quite literally need? You're
Mm-hmm.
such a, well, dick.
Yeah.
I know I told you that I was like trying to censor swear words, but here I am like just about to like go on the cusp of like a giant rant. When yeah, so like when I saw that, and thankfully, like going through the comments, it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a hit or miss. Sometimes you'll be like,
Yeah.
yeah, and then sometimes you're like, oh no, you totally missed the point.
Yeah.
When I went to click on it, and they were talking about the the removal of these benches,
Mm-hmm.
everyone's like, you are literally the worst person on the planet. How could you think about something? It's like, how could you forget other people need this aside from just people who need to take a quick nap?
Right.
It's like, it's really not all, it's like, it's not really a big deal. It's just like, well, it is a big deal. You can't just remove something that other people need, but at the same time, that now just invites a conversation. How could you help without taking something away?
Right.
Because if you take something away, someone else is going to suffer, and someone else is going to be angry for the
Right.
wrong, like for other reasons aside from like, well, there's someone who's experiencing housing insecurity right now.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want them on the streets, or you don't want to see them, where are the policies to help them?
Right.
Know? And then I'm just I get disappointed. I
Yeah.
just hate
It's
feeling disappointed.
disappointing. It is.
I hate feeling disappointed when people just forget
Yeah.
that the majority of Americans are one step closer to being in that position. Obviously,
Yes.
with the lack of unemployment, with the unemployment still on like very high,
Mm-hmm.
it takes what, an accident or a
Yeah.
job.
You're most people are one crisis away from being, not having a house, not having a place to live. And it's one particular set of circumstances that just hits at the wrong time.
And
And you can be in a really uncomfortable position. And it has nothing to do with, your decisions.
it's
Sometimes
upset.
life
Yeah.
just happens. It has
Uh-huh.
nothing to do with, I think there's a lot of stigma and belief that, if you're unhoused, you're automatically, lazy and a drug addict and this and that and the other. And it's like, none of that's true at
Yeah.
all, even remotely. And
Yeah. It's a nightmare because I think about me. Like I think about
mhm,
myself. Like right now, thankfully, my parents make the joke. Like I never told my parents this, because they think it's a joke, but it's something I'm really concerned about. It's why I haven't moved out. It's why I haven't moved out, because it's like I've I had jobs which could potentially house me at least in an apartment on a short
mhm,
term. But then when I think about my long-term gains, it's like, well, I'm cutting myself short. Like if rent is about $1,000,
mhm,
right? Which is about what it's like here. It's like, okay, I could do that, but then what I have for myself or my own personal pleasures or food and water and all that stuff, it's like about $200.
mhm,
It's like doing $200 at a time is already stretching me thin.
mhm.
And it's just like, well, if I stay here, I could build it up over time. So I have a little bit more of a security, like in case something goes wrong, right? Like if I got into an accident or I had like a medical crisis, then
Mhm.
well, I'll be okay. But then it's just
Right.
like, well, I'll just stay home. But my parents made a joke where it's like, oh, time to get out. 18, pack your bags, go. And it's like, but where will I go? And I know that
Yeah.
I said, like, well, I have a gym at work. I could just shower there. But it's like, I still don't have a place to sleep. I'm a small person. I can sleep in my car. But it's like, do I really want to sleep in my car
Yeah.
months on end? Crazy. So it's
Mhm.
like, stuff like that. And it's like, we're just joking. It's like, you don't realize that crippling anxiety of knowing that, yes, I do not have a job to keep me stabilized at an apartment. I
Mhm.
could couch surf if I want to, but they're not going to make me do that forever. At some point,
Right.
I have to start paying my dues.
Right.
Those were some of the things that I think my parents were just insensitive, or like they didn't know about. It's like, well, now I'm working in something that is really significant. It's like if you're talking to me that I'm like you're about to kick me out, it's like yeah, I could be literally that person on the street. College students or people who are like out of college recently are now dealing with that. It's like
Yep.
get a job to get housed or get a job and go home with your parents or to your guardians, and that might not be the safe place, or
Right.
you're just incompatible with living with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a constant afterthought. And sometimes when my parents and I get into fights, I'll be like, okay, I need to be away from this house for, XYZ reasons. So it's just like, but how am I going to do that? What do I need
Yeah.
to take? What do I have to leave behind?
Mm-hmm.
Where is like that the safe funds I have access to? So like stuff like that. So it just drives me. It drove me insane. Like, I get really anxious about like whenever that topic comes around. It's just like, what am I gonna do now? It's like,
Yeah.
well, now it's like, well, if it's just me, like, well, what about someone who's really currently in the thick of it right now that they don't have parents to stay with or friends
Right.
to ride it out with? Like, what do you do
Mm-hmm.
now? So the idea of feeling
Exactly.
stuck uh sucks.
It
So
does.
I'm fortunate, but at the same time, like I'm very well aware of my precarious position that I have right now. I do work. I did also recently get a new job offer to work with students in the summer. So that's great. But I have to wait till the summer. It does like whether or not pays nice. Well, we'll have to see because it requires me to drive a lot. So I expect most of my fees to go to gas and
Yeah.
food that I get at gas stations because I'm a very very hungry person. But uh, will it be sustainable for me to maybe
Mm-hmm.
move out? Who knows?
Yeah.
So those are the things that I encourage our viewers to think about. It's like be constantly aware of your financial situation and then
Right.
make plans if things go awry.
Yeah.
So it's not that I wanted to, knock on wood. I really don't want
Of course.
anybody to have that like unlucky dice roll of fate
Yeah.
and have something terrible happen. No, 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 no. But
Right.
it's just the reality of it is if you're middle class or lower middle class,
Mm-hmm.
we're towing the line right now. We're
Yep.
towing the line.
Absolutely.
But uh, now that I think about it, when I think about your company, are you still working full time, or this is it? Like
This is my job.
you're
It
full
takes.
committed.
Yeah, I am committed. I'm committed. I have like little side things that
Side
I do
hobbies?
that like trickle in money sometimes, but for the most
Oh,
part,
do tell. I'm just kidding. Okay.
nothing like that. Nothing that fun, unfortunately. No.
No, I was like thinking
um,
like like hobby stuff,
yeah,
like little
hobby stuff.
Etsy stuff or
Yeah,
stuff like. Oh, cool, that's
yeah.
awesome. I do too. So you're not the only one.
Very good.
No, but so were you unemployed during the pandemic? Is that what it was?
So so what happened was I was in school, I was in a program
Right.
where it was like accelerated for basically like you're kind of earning your first year of your master's degree while you do your last year of your bachelor's type
Oh,
of thing. But I
okay.
was also working like 60 or 70 hours a week and I was really stressed out.
Hmm.
And
Sorry,
my
before you
husband,
continue, what
yeah,
was your old job? Or you don't have to say the company name or anything. Like, what was the realm of your previous one?
um, I worked in like a call center.
Oh, yeah, that's stressful. 60 hours of me doing call centers. I hate calling people. I already hate it. So go
I
on.
do too. It's terrible.
Go on.
So it was very stressful and I was really wanting to kind of put my all into my schoolwork.
Right.
And my husband was just like, quit your job. Just do it. Just quit your job. I don't care. Just do it. It's fine. We'll be fine.
Oh
So
god.
it took a lot for me because I have issues, but I did it. Um
Great segue. I have issues.
thanks. But I did it.
Okay.
And I finished my bachelor's degree and
Right.
graduated. I had every intention to continue with grad school. And then I got really sick uh, and found out I have autoimmune disease. And
Oh.
I've been kind of like just battling that and trying to acquire diagnoses, which in the United States, as most people who are here know, can be very challenging and time
Very.
consuming.
Very.
So I just finally, like recently, was given the answer that I have lupus, and have started like taking steps to try and control it and make my body function like it used to, or as close to as we can get it. So
Dang.
yeah,
Yeah.
kind of a weird long story.
No, it's
But
okay. I have questions
but
about it now, but that can
yeah,
come after.
so as I started to kind of get things under control, I was like starting this and researching it and everything
On
before
top
I
of
even got
this.
my diagnosis or anything. But I was just like, I felt like I was doing nothing, and I've pretty much had like 2 jobs since I was 16 up until the point that I quit the one that I was working 60 hours a week, which totally counts as 2 jobs, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
So yeah, so I'm more under control now, and bleed free is taking up a great deal of my time. So that's kind of my job, and I try to make sure I'm resting enough that I don't
Please do.
hurt my body or send it into some sort of fit, because that's kind of what it does. It just gets very angry if I do anything too different. But
Ah.
so that's my kind of
Like the adjacent how
long
to start.
trail to, yeah, how I got
Okay.
here.
Yeah, kind of like the adjacent of what happened until Bleed Freeze started.
Yes.
Before I want to pick your brain a little bit about lupus, because it's, it happens. I wouldn't have known until you said something, so
Yeah.
that's really exciting. Well, probably not exciting for you, but it's exciting to learn. It's exciting
Yes.
to learn about it, but obviously if you're in it, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
What's your bachelor's in?
Criminal justice and psychology.
Hey, psychology, let's go.
Yes. So like my goal ultimately, and I still plan to do this eventually, I just kind of want to make sure I'm having consistent healthiness and
Before
not
you,
the I'm like, I have like intermittent healthiness. So I'll be fine one day, and then the
and then
next day I
not.
might wake up and just be not okay. So I want to have some consistency so that I can actually get good grades. But I plan to get my PhD in psychology and
Oh,
become like a therapist. I'd like to work with like addiction specifically,
mm-hmm.
because someone I love has battled with addiction, quite significantly, and
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like people don't understand or view it as a disease still, and
Mm-hmm.
people really don't grasp like what it actually does in your
Mm-hmm.
brain and things like that. So I feel like my experience and perspective will help me have more empathy
Of
as like
course.
a therapist for
Mm-hmm.
people in that situation.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's great. Because like you said, it does change the brain, especially if you've
Mhm.
been in long term, and then your behaviors change. Then you're stuck in a literal, quite endless loop of
Right.
going in and going out, going in and going out, despite the support and the resources that are available. Because they might know it logically, but that little
Right.
the pleasure seeking centers inside your brains be like, well, I need to get that next hit or the next
Mhm.
high. But already the language is changing. But now that since you're serious on doing that, eventually, I'm glad that you are pursuing education, because that was a topic last week when we were talking about those who were formerly incarcerated. Is the language needs to change, but also it's like it's very short term thinking if you are someone who is an addict. It's like,
Mhm.
where can I get this versus like I want to be clean. And
Right.
so it's it's complicated for those, especially for those who are supportive like you to that person that you care about. So
Right.
I think that you're doing a very great thing.
Thank
um
you.
but moving that aside, it's just so lupus, I've only really heard about it just sparingly. The only other person or prolific person who has it, I believe, is Selena Gomez. So I
Yes,
didn't.
she does. Yeah.
That's it. Question: when you were saying you had an autoimmune disease, my first thought was Lyme disease. That was my first thought: Lyme disease or other things. So I
Hmm.
was just like, huh. So which one is it now? So like, lupus. So what
Yes.
was that like? That whole period where you're trying to find out what you had, but then also pushing yourself to like get things done.
So frustrating. Um,
I'm saying, I know.
infuriating, honestly. So,
What happens to you?
I have 2 autoimmune diseases.
Yeah, too.
Hashimoto's
Ah,
is an autoimmune disease that attacks your thyroid, and
okay.
lupus is an autoimmune disease that attacks mostly like your connective tissue, basically. So, like your
Wow,
joints and things like that.
you've got a real bad mix then.
yes, it's not a good time. Um,
It's not. It doesn't sound like it.
yeah, and it's pretty common for people with autoimmune disease to have like 2 or 3 together
Right.
because of reasons, science.
Science. No.
I'm not a doctor, but it is not uncommon to have more than one together.
Okay.
So I started like having really bad migraines in the summer of 2019, and it was like I've always kind of had migraines, but like it was different and it was like constant and it was happening more and more and more.
Oh
So
no.
I went to the doctor and I was just like, hey, like all the things that I used to do that would help me with my migraines are not working. And I haven't not had a migraine in 21 days and I need help. So my primary doctor was on vacation or something. So I saw somebody else in the practice and she gave me something and then she gave me like a muscle relaxer or something, like because she thought maybe I had tension or something. I don't know. And she
Yeah.
was just like, come back in 2 weeks when your doctor's back and we'll talk
We'll
about it
talk about it
again.
more.
Yeah. And I got like a referral for a neurologist who could get me in 2 months later or something like that. Because, of course, American medicine. So I went back 2 weeks later to talk to my regular doctor, and I didn't feel like I was being taken very seriously.
Oh,
And like at this point, it's been over a month of me having a very
migraine.
severe headache where like
Uh-oh. Lucky?
I have to shut all the lights off and cover the windows and lay in my bed and not do anything.
Sorry, wait.
So
Quick lag. Wally
mm,
check. Wally check.
what?
Wally check. Okay, just making sure that the internet. You just like cut in and out for a brief moment there.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. Um, it's on my internet, so it's like my internet should be able to handle a Zoom call from states away, so should be fine. Okay, we're good now.
Okay.
So you had a migraine for about a month now.
Yeah, a little over a month at this point. And it's summer vacation. And normally, like summer vacation, my kids and I are out there
Enjoying
doing
it,
everything. Yeah.
but you can't.
Yeah. And I haven't been able to. And now I've missed a month of summer vacation and I'm getting really frustrated. So I'm trying to explain to her, like, this is not going well for me. And I had some other symptoms too, and I'm trying to explain them. And she just like wasn't really like hearing me. And I like looked at her and I was like, I feel like I am a shell of the person I was just 2 or 3 months ago. And she like giggle snorted.
That's a
Yeah.
as someone
Like,
who's trying to get into med school, that really hurts me.
yeah. And I, was obviously not happy with that. So she told me that she was going to run my regular yearly physical blood work. And I was just like, you're not going to look for anything else in my blood work. Like, you're doing blood work. Can you just test other things? And she's just like, I'll look at your B12. And I'm just like, that's it. Like, that's all you're going to do for me. And then she was like, so when I check your blood, there's not going to be any drugs on there, is there?
Oh my god.
And I'm just like, I'm literally talking to you about how I'm sad because I want to go camping with my children. No, there's not going to be drugs on there. And she's like, not even weed. And I'm just like, no, not even weed. Like,
state?
Weed is legal in my state too, which is like,
okay. I'm just
like, I don't even, and I'm just like, are you even allowed to ask me that like that? Like, are you serious? And like, she's like, you're sure? Like, literally, like 3 times, like, do you want to just check it? Like, go for it. Like,
you're checking my blood anyway.
you don't have to take my word for it. You're taking my blood. You can have it. Like, I don't know. So I just got in my car after, and I called my mother-in-law, and I was just sobbing, and I was just like, these people are gonna let me die. Because like something's wrong, and they don't care, and they're not listening. And I ended up getting a new doctor immediately. I never went back. because that would be terrible.
No,
I
that would be
cannot,
terrible. That
I
would be
could not
terrible.
justify going back. And I went through neurology and went through all those tests. Then I had to go to, who came next? Rheumatology, had a bunch of tests through them. Then endocrinology, had a bunch of tests through them. Then I started having heart problems. So I got a cardiologist, all sorts of stuff. So it was a lot of back and forth. And literally, like, it was like every time they referred me to a new specialist, it was like, oh, come here in 2 to 3 months. And oh, you need this test. Well, we can't fit you in until a month from now. And then it takes 2 weeks to get the results. And then
the wait and the delay.
yes.
So when you finally got the complete diagnosis that you had lupus, that was like what, a year? It's a year later. If
about a year and a half, yeah.
Oh, wow. So 2019 up until oh wow. Sorry, let me call you dude. I know that people have their love and hate for it, so I try not to do it as much. Especially if I'm doing these, I try to be super careful about how I refer to people here. So 2019 took about a year and a half. This was on top of the pandemic too, so the scheduling must be a nightmare.
It is. It was, is, continues to be.
It continues to be. So my next question is that since now that you have it, you're currently in treatment for it, or at least to manage the symptoms so it doesn't flare up and literally bite you in the butt about it later. Do you have future appointments lined up for you as well? Don't say the next 30 minutes.
Yeah, no, I basically, like, going to the doctors is just kind of part of my life at this point. Yeah, I'm just doing the best I can with it.
Pat.
Like I have to go get blood work done fairly often, like every 2 to 3 months, just to kind of see where my levels are at and make sure we're managing everything, because it helps if things are going up, if things are headed in the wrong direction, then we can kind of change things and try and cut it off before it gets severe, and things like that. So
now it's manageable to like the pain, and I mean just general, just overarching. Generally, it's moderate now.
It just depends on the day. I'm starting to feel a lot better. So I started seeing like something called like a functional wellness doctor, and they're like in preventative medicine, and they help like look at the whole picture and stuff like that. And they helped me kind of like come up with like an eating plan that would be best for my specific body issues, and different like supplements and different things like that. And since I've started that protocol, I'm doing much better, and I'm noticing like consistent improvements. I've definitely had to learn to like listen to my body, and not just listen, but actually comply with what it's telling me.
Yeah,
because
I feel you on that.
Yeah. So, because if I overdo it, like it could put me out for days. So it's not worth it to overdo it. It's okay to slow down and take breaks, and I've had to really teach myself that, and that definitely helps me maintain things. But it is something where some days my care and just like taking care of my own body feels like a full-time job by itself.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because right now I'm actually in the cusp of dealing with a burnout. Like I said, the podcast itself is on a hiatus since I'm the one that runs it. And it's tiring. Like it's like this is something I do voluntarily. But it is the amount of work that I could do for this is akin to a job, or at least a part-time job. And I have essentially a full-time job that acts part-time, but it's just by space and time allotment. But it's tiring. It's hard. And the idea of listening to your body, I do not, as far as I know, on my last physical, I do not have anything like an autoimmune disease or anything like that. But what I am prone to do, and everyone who knows me knows this about me, even on social media, is that I don't sleep well. And I do have, at least, according to my therapist, I do have at least some forms of anxiety and some forms of depression. And it's just like, okay, well, that's not great. But it's the working until you are completely exhausted is something that I tend to do. I tend to put my all in a lot of things, but
Mhm.
at some point it's gonna come to a crest, and I'm just
Yep.
gonna crash. And right now, listening to my body is already hard enough. I say I listen to my body, but then, like you said, I don't comply. I don't comply
Yes.
to what's like, you need to sleep, or you need to eat, or you need to drink water. I'm like, after this,
Yeah.
that's like my curse phrase right there. It's like, after this project, after this like upload, I will
Mhm.
eat, or I will shower, I will do these things.
Yes.
And because like, well, that's, it's like, wow, it's like, well, you're so hard work. It's like, no, I'm aware of deadlines, or I'm aware of like, this needs to be done at this current moment now. I cannot
Mhm.
put it off until later because I will never get it done.
Yeah.
Knowing myself, it's like, if I put myself on my bed to rest, I mean, I can't do this. I do need to rest. But it's
Mhm.
like, if I put myself to like this nice cozy bed right here, I will never get up. So it's
Yeah.
like, get everything done, because when I do end up laying down, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So, but it's a double-edged sword, because right now I'm like this close,
Mhm.
to reaching that, like, ugh, like now I just need to like turtle in, cut off all social media, and no one will hear from me for weeks.
Yeah.
But I can't do that anymore. Obviously, with the pandemic, it's like, you need to be more. You need to be more. I can't say collaborative. Like, you need to be more connected, but at the
Yeah.
same time, like, with the exhaustion that like you and I have already potentially felt, like with how we deal with stress and sickness and stuff like that, it's already hard. It's a job. Taking care of your body is a job, and
It is.
it's your life. Because like,
Mhm.
but yeah, so I need to be better about listening on when it means to take a break, because I did do the 60-hour, 70-hour beat, like 60-hour long weeks of just working in on end, and you barely have the weekend to recuperate and then do it all over again. I already did that. I quit
Yeah.
that. And here I am doing something similar, but with just less hours. So it's just like, I need more time to sleep, or I need more time to eat, or I need time to rest. Like, I have online mutuals are telling, like, go to bed. What are you doing
Yeah.
still up? And I have like my boyfriend and my family's like, what are you doing still up? Go to bed. And here I am, like, in my computer, like, I got stuff to do though. I still got stuff to do.
Yeah.
So it's, thank you for still remind, even if I've never formally met you in person, I would love to at one point. It's taking a break, literally listening to your body is
Yeah.
the next important thing. Should be
It
my first
is.
priority above everything
Yes.
else, but I gotta be better about doing that. Let's be
Yeah.
honest.
And I think it's easy for us, especially like I want to say even especially women, that like we're just kind of raised and taught and perpetuated this idea to put ourselves last.
Yeah, a little bit.
and
Yeah.
and like you see that kind of a little bit in media, like the tired mom who hasn't showered and she's messy, or like just different little like tropes like that,
I don't
or
like
like
tropes like that. Yeah.
yeah, I don't like them either, but like that idea that like if you don't do X, Y, and Z thing, you're gonna disappoint someone,
Or the house falls apart.
or the house will fall apart, or the podcast will fall apart, or the nonprofit will fall apart, or whatever. But like at the same time, all the people who enjoy or benefit from the house or the podcast or the nonprofit value you,
Yeah, that's yeah.
and and they want you to continue being
Yeah.
here, you know what I mean,
Mhm.
and they're going to benefit from your self-care
Mhm.
because of like the message that you give to others,
Mhm.
and just the hope and the education and the inspiration that you're providing to others. And I've really had to sometimes just kind of change my view that like self-care for me is taking care of my family,
Mhm.
because I'm part of my family. So
Mhm.
I don't know if that helps you at all, that
Oh no,
like
yeah,
sometimes
it
you
does.
have to think like maybe self-care for you is
Yeah.
helping fulfilling destiny because you're part of that.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you for doing that too, because having, like, I'm trying not to cry because I'm a very quick crier.
Me too. It's
But
okay.
it's those things, like, like receiving those messages. It's also learning how to undo receiving compliments, kind of in
Mhm.
that way. Because like you said, you're telling me right now, that I know like this is like coming, but we're closer to the end. But it's that conversation is like taking care of yourself, putting yourself first. Putting yourself first helps all of us, but most of all, just take care of yourself. My founder and several of our staff and interns like, we could take it up. Like, it's okay, we could do it. It's like, oh, that's great. I really do appreciate it. But part of me also, like you said, putting myself first is kind of like an afterthought. Like, no, like this is just for the sake of what I do. I love what I do. And like even if it is sometimes stressful and it's hard, I like putting out the content for people to see. I like being consistent, but sometimes that just doesn't happen. So when people offer their help or they give me these words of like whether it's praise or it's just like comfort, right? It's like we could do this. Take care of yourself. We want you to be healthy. Your health comes first, stuff like that. It's like pulling teeth out of my mouth sometimes because just like I need to accept it. Like I need to take their words for it. Like if they say that they love me and they care for me, I really need to be better at accepting those. Sometimes it's very hard to do for at least the way that I've been raised, saying I love yous or like that self-care. You know, it's not a language that I learned here. So it's just like it's like that how you love somebody is how you take care of somebody. So if you're taking care of the task that needs to be done, that's how you take care of your family. Everything else can be handled privately at home when the work is done, which is a toxic mindset if you go as far as I do it. Or if you have done it when you were preparing yourself and your jobs and your kids at the same time, that's probably a language you might have done for yourself. But accepting, like I feel like aggressively tell me that lovingly, it's like just accept it, please. I'm doing this for you. Just accept it. Accept the fact that I care about you. I love you. Just don't burn out. So I need to be better about receiving those messages without wanting to turtle or like lash out. Say like, are you telling me I can't handle my job? You know. So it's just like undoing all of those things, especially in the pandemic. Ooh, a lot of time in that self-reflective mode since I have nothing but time. All those things. Then there's that afterthought, like, well, you have all that time, you could be resting. It's like, true. Since that 9 to 5 American work week, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it as to the tenacity that I did it before. Now that I'm turning 25 this year. Woo, big number. Woo. But taking that time to relax, and thank you for reminding me that I needed to do better about that. So
of course,
definitely you are, especially this week. I know that I told you that like this week is like packed. So after this week, just gonna like couch potato it on this nice, lovely bed that's totally made, and then maybe a couple movies and my best friend to chill out with. So
sounds like a good plan.
That sounds like a good plan. All right. So as like before, any last thoughts for me, for everybody else who will be listening to this, to check out Bleed Free. Links will be at the bottom. Anything?
I don't know. My mind is going blank.
No, that's perfectly okay. I mean, I could start off this. Thank you, Lucky. This episode is a little shorter, but it's because I know that we are also in 2 different time zones. I cannot steal all your time. I love to. If anything, what I hope through this podcast and through since I will be seeing you in my mutual in my private account, I would love to see how far Bleed Free will come through it by fall. I want to see the growth. And I think that's amazing because I see it like at some point that the number that you see on Twitter, it's going to be from like 2 or 3 or 5 to 100, 200, 2000, over time. I would love to see that growth, especially since you're starting in the beginning. I want to see where it will go, not in the end, but in the future. So that's super exciting for me. Thank you for being open and a little bit vulnerable about sharing your story about autoimmune disease to us, because we hear prolifically through big celebrities and all that stuff, but hearing it from someone who's just doing their normal
life
doing as close to normal their American life, you are battling something a little bit that's a little bit in their face, and I mean, it's a lot. So thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that with me. I was not expecting that. Well, it's something to learn too. So thank you. And also,
thank you for having me.
Yeah, because woo, it's a lot. I'm sweating. Yeah, and then thank you for reminding me about taking that extra care, because I could be putting myself into that path where I might have put myself into a condition where I'm gonna need lifelong care because I was not listening to my body or to my apparent needs. So it's super important. Viewers, please listen to your bodies.
Yes.
And if you
and comply.
and comply. Yeah, listen to your bodies and comply. If they say eat, it's like if you're in a meeting and you still need to eat. Like nibble on a snack, drink water, anything. And then for all my sleepers out there, sleep, get good quality sleep, please. Because sleep is very, very important. And then have constant talks about periods with your peers and your family. And it's not something that you need to be shy about. It's perfectly okay to talk about it and to talk about the issues that come with it. The lack of menstrual products, the lack of access to care, even green, like how to stay green, how we can keep the waste on the low, especially if we're living at home. Waste is on the rise of how often we use trash when we're not out working or going to school at the same time. So have those conversations, and then don't be cruel when you see people on the streets. Offer them help in any way that you can to the best of your ability, if you're able to. If not, just show them compassion, show them care. This is a very sensitive time right now with unemployment on the rise, and then obviously just trying to find ways to have more financial security is really difficult. So please offer compassion when you can, and share this message, share this podcast, follow Lucky and Bleed Free on their social media accounts below when I put them there eventually. And I look forward to having more talks with you, Lucky, whether it's just on this podcast or just to talk about how your company's been doing. I would love to keep in contact with you until then.
I would love that too. Thank you.
All right. So to everybody here, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode. I'm not telling you when because I can never be good with deadlines. So until next time, thank you everybody, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.